Welcome back to Cam Good Times. I'm going to give a little bit of a synopsis of what I've seen so far as I've tested out skate boots and ski bindings using my ski boards, and give a little comparison of those to using ski boots, or ski board boots are also what these are referred to as, with their lower flex. And I also wanted to draw a little bit of comparison to what it's like using the snowboard boots in Jerry Feet adapters with Tech 9 snowboard bindings that have this third upper cuff. So first off though, I wanted to talk about why in the world I even did this in the first place. So for one, I absolutely love inline skating and I love skiboarding. I've been a skier for a long time, and as I discovered skiboarding and how skate-like it was, yet still stable wherever you want to be on the mountain, I realized that this was just what I wanted to do, and it's been a blast. And since I love both of those things, and they both are so similar to one another in terms of maneuverability, spins, jumps, all kinds of things, I wanted to see more ways that I can combine the two. And I was really curious about using this prototype adapter on my Seba SX Carbon Wizard skating boot and seeing how that would go. At the same time, my second reason for wanting to do this was because I know skaters, every time they try skiboarding, they absolutely love it. I figured it might be nice to make it possible to use a skate boot and see how other skaters would like that, if that would maybe make this sport a little more accessible to them, especially if they're really attached to a particular boot that they have that's very supportive. Thirdly, I want to give a shout out to Ivo from This Is Soul Skate Shop out in the Netherlands, because he was the person, or rather one of his staff I believe, was one of the people who had initially asked me if it was possible to use skate boots on ski boards. At the time, it wasn't possible, but I thought to myself, maybe it could be. And so then I started working with Jerry Feet on this prototype idea that we're continuing to work on and figure out. So let's get into the comparisons. First of all, as you saw in my recent video of skate boot versus ski boot, I tried to keep it as scientific as I could, because I went down the exact same ski run on the same day, and it was the same conditions. However, there was a little bit of a gap of time in between using my skate boots versus my skiboard boots, because I had to hike down and grab my skiboard boots and then come back up the mountain. And so it's not entirely scientific, so even though this is the control option to compare this to, I was a little more exhausted when I went down on my skiboard boots, and so it was a little harder to have as good of technique as I would have wanted to, but it still worked. And at the same time, maybe the snow was a little slushier at that point. Something else to keep in mind, I'm not nearly as experienced on these in snow as I am with these, obviously. And so that was a competing variable in that experiment. I would say though that nonetheless, this still did a lot better than I thought it would, going down that really rough hill. And my ability to go down that hill with both of these types of setups was somewhat similar. I just had to put a bit more effort into using this because I wasn't as used to the forward flex as I am to the forward flex on this. So it took a little more energy out of me, but it was still possible. I still felt in control. And in fact, as you saw in the video, I was able to do heel and toe tricks. And that was able to be accomplished on these, even with that forward flex on this. So that still worked out fairly well. Because of that forward flex and getting used to it, it was a little harder to stop as fast. Nonetheless, I was still able to stop, even when I was flying down the steepest part of that hill. It allowed me to do so. And so that's what I would say would be the comparison between those two in that experiment. Now, on the skate boot, it gives, because this is made of carbon, this gives plenty of lateral support still, which was really surprising to me. But I guess not too surprising, because this stuff is so bulletproof. You have to really push hard to try to get this to move at all. But it gave really good lateral support as I was trying to carve and move around. And given it, as you can see in the video from earlier, I was going down some really rough bumps and nasty snow down a blue square run, which isn't super steep, but it's steep enough to really see what it's like to be flying down on these. And probably some of the nastiest conditions I've ever gone down on that specific slope, because there was a lot of melted in potholes and other things. It felt like I was going down a washboard, and yet it worked really well despite that. It was rough using both the ski boot and the skate boot on that. This cuff allows for a lot more forward flex in comparison to this skiboard boot. See, the skiboard boot, it gives some flex, but not a lot. And so I'm more used to this kind of feel, and so that did throw me off a little bit on this and made it a little more challenging for me to go down that slope. But I will say this, and this is where the snowboard boot comes in with this Tech 9 binding that we sell at skiboards.com. With this, there's again the same amount of lateral support going on, but interestingly, a pretty similar amount of forward flex going on with this as with the skate boot. And so it's just a different feel. I'm not as comfortable with it yet because I'm not as familiar with it. But as you can see in this video here, my buddy Osamu out in Japan rides with this kind of setup all the time and is doing crazy things in it. And so I would say it's fairly comparable to the feel of using the Jerry feet with snowboard boots and bindings. However, another thing you can keep in mind with using this is that if you don't want that much forward flex, Evo from This Is Soul actually has a video that talks a great deal about ways to prevent as much forward flex. In fact, you can put a certain kind of lining inside of here to keep it from flexing as much forward, like some plastic or something. You can also use a rivet gun to rivet this cuff back to the back of your boot. And at the same time, you can decide to use different cuffs. You can use a carbon cuff if you want, and that would give a bit more upper support. And so there's a lot of options there. So, all in all, would this be the ideal option? I don't think this is as ideal as using a skiboard boot like the X-Track, but it still works. It still can get you down the mountain. It still gives enough stability. Now, given I can't speak for a lot of other boots just yet because I haven't tested them out. However, this is a very rigid boot. I would imagine the newer version of the Wizard skate boot would be even more control, would give even more control. Now, given this is, hopefully if there's enough demand, we can produce these and see what happens there. And if there is enough demand and we're able to start producing these, then I do think that would be really cool for skaters to try these out. And for them to, and just for people to have the option. And again, because this is fairly waterproof around the lower section, it would really have to be like a rainy day or a really powdery day in order for the snow to get up in here. Or really, in this case, I was around in the slush and nothing really got up in here. It seemed to be just fine. Perhaps for many hours of skiboarding, it would get a little more soaked and saturated. But for the hour or so that I used this, it didn't seem to get wet at all in here, even though I didn't use that liner. So again, you can still use that silicone liner on the inside. It goes around the inner Intuition liner, and that can help. I would also recommend trying these out for those who live next to snow domes or indoor ski centers. These would be fantastic in there. Just to use your skate boot and not have to worry about the initial upfront purchase of some of these setups, and give the skiboards a try. I think that would be pretty cool. I just like options, and I like offering options to people, and I know everyone has different feet, and that can be really challenging in trying to find what fits well, especially when it comes to ski boots and other types of boots. It's hard to find what fits right, and so it's just nice having some options up front that can work, so that way you have the comfort and can still enjoy yourself. So there you go. That's what I have so far, and please feel free to comment below. Let me know any ideas or questions or thoughts you might have about this experiment, and any interest you might have about these. That's the thing. I wanted to involve all of you, my audience, and seeing this to get your feedback, because I very much value it, and I want to make sure that this is something that could be of benefit to people. And so stay tuned for more material as we go forward into this next winter. Take care, everybody.